All right, cool. Looks like we got everybody. Thank y'all for attending this official DDD Cyberstar, and I got Cyberstar. I just noticed that I got Cyberstar meeting. Hopefully this could just be a conversation more so than me talking, but there's a lot of info, so I'll just jump right in. We only got like a half hour, so let me jump in. I got these as 3 sessions. This one is just going to be on foundational definitions, an overview of DDD, using plain language, not the stuffy jargon that you'll find in the book, in the textbook. They call the blue book, and look at the business motivation behind DDD and behind design in general. All right, so let's start off with this, right? We have how many of us in here? Maybe 8 of us. What are the odds that we share the same meaning of the term domain-driven design, or even design itself? What do you say? 8 different definitions? Maybe 5?
Like 13%.
Thank you, Sam.
I can at least count 3 different uses of the words design off the top of my head, and I'm not even a designer.
Right. And then even among developers like myself, Brandon, Sam, Adam here, we probably have 4 different definitions, right? I'd say we have 4 different definitions, like all time. And coincidentally, like an hour ago, I saw this tweet. Well, it's not a tweet, it's on Blue Sky. But I thought it was hilarious, and it was very fitting to what we're going to talk about today. A new meaning of the term separation of concerns, and we know what that is. Ask 10 developers what a responsibility is, and you'll get 11 different answers. And so you might say, what's the problem? What's the problem? What you getting at, Drew? Well, the goals for this session is to set the table, agree on a simple working definition of DDD and design, understand the problem that design and DDD aims to solve, clear up misuses of the terms, especially domain and model, and then relate these to our situation, hopefully. That's session 1. Session 2 will have other stuff, but so for now, we're not going to be talking about classes, data, code snippets, or anything like that in this next 25 minutes. So none of this cool stuff. We'll do that later on. But I'm sure everybody here, or most of us, will recognize a lot of these terms. And they all fall within design. But again, everyone has different conceptions of design. Why not just jump right in to the code? As developers, of course, we're going to ask this question. But in my experience, we waste a lot of time and effort talking past each other. And it's been more or less normalized. People see it as a cost of doing business, this confusion, this miscommunication. A lot of money, time, effort can be saved by just stopping and agreeing on the fundamentals. So here's live footage of me at one of my past projects. Bear with me here.
Your audio's not coming through.
I don't think it's sharing the audio.
You guys can hear this, right?
No.
Oh, man.
This is one of my favorites of all time.
So you know what this is. So
Who's on first?
Who's on first? Right. So, oh man, so that messed up the whole. But so the idea is if you know the bit, watch it. Watch it when you get a chance. It's 3 minutes of comedy gold. It's basically
No spoilers, please. It
I-
hasn't been around long enough. Don't spoil it.
oh, you haven't seen it?
No, I'm just kidding.
Here's the link to
Okay.
this, and there is a Shel Silverstein poem that's very similar that I'll link as
Oh.
well.
Olivia, thank you so much.
I performed this bit with a friend one time, so I know
Oh, you
most of
did?
it. Yeah.
Oh, so you know exactly where I'm going with this.
Yeah, who's on first? What's on second? I don't know who's on third.
Right. Okay. I thought I was aging myself by putting this up here because I'm like, who's gonna know about these happening stuff? But
Everybody does.
all right. So basically, the idea is you got people talking about the same thing, not realizing it, or different things and not realizing it. Meanings get lost. Everything's confusing, basically. Break that down into more detail. This is what can happen when people have different meanings for basic things like design. You get inconsistency, misaligned priorities. And I had this problem a lot, and I still do have this problem where specifically when it comes to refactoring. And I prioritize refactoring in a certain way. And if I'm after different things by doing that refactoring, it doesn't really help the rest of the team unless I'm collaborating with that team and I'm sharing the same understanding of what design is and what good design is and what we're after in the design. So it's just, these are very familiar problems. Wasted duplication of effort on solving the same problem different ways, more tech debt, communication collaboration breaks down, right? I'm sure we've all experienced this, even here talking about Cyberstar. Like frustration, disagreements arise due to differing design perspective. Code reviews are difficult because we disagree about what good design is. Slower productivity, testing is more complex, slower onboarding. So overall, the accumulation of these increases project risk. And we have the opportunity to avoid this by just getting on the same page. So here's the blue book, and it is 500 pages. It's a nerd flex to say that I went through the whole book cover to cover because I have no life. And the reading, like people describe it as poetic and philosophical, but there's a lot of knowledge in this book that covers design, architecture, collaboration. And DDD design is aimed at solving these problems. So first, before talking about domain-driven design, let's get to the bottom of the design itself and get to a working definition. So again, earlier I asked, how many different definitions I would get from the team, right? And the point of this is for us to all get on the same page about what even is design for it to be domain-driven. Again, if I jump into just the patterns and code, it's like giving you the keys to a car, but not even understand what driving is, or like what the rules of the road are, right? So, what is design? So here's my definition, or here's a definition I'm trying to put in plain terms, based on distilling the information in the book. So the action design is to decide how to structure software elements, small, medium, and large, to solve business problems. And the noun is the resulting structure that we get from that. Give me some input, give me some feedback. Any feedback on this definition? Good, bad, not clear? Too simple? All right, I'll keep going.
I like it.
It makes
I
sense.
think it makes sense. It kind of reminds me of like the definition of like UX design, but just in software terms.
Right. And yeah, these principles go across different mediums, not just software, right? Small, medium, large. So a small design decision would relate to a variable, a statement, a method. A large would be the whole API, the back end, right? That would be a large design decision, architectural, and everything in between. These are all design decisions, right? By this definition. You'll hear the word structure a lot. Structure, and this is by Kent Beck, beneficially relating elements. And you'll notice this is a noun and a verb. This is an action and a statement. Or you get the point. Relating is about how one element's coupled to another, or how one element is cohesive with another. When we're talking about this, we're talking about things like, think of Cyberstar Foundation, and then think of Cyberstar Talent, right? How is one element within Talent cohesive with another element within Talent, right? Or is it coupled to another element in Foundation? Right, we'll get into that as we talk through some of these. And the behavior is functionality the user sees it externally, structure is internal. Right? What's the reason of pointing out that, you know, the small, medium, and large examples? It's because every developer is responsible for design. Many times you'll see organizations where developers just get handed down a set of requirements, and their job is just to code the design that they got or the requirements that they got. It's not really to think about design, where to put elements, where to structure elements, how to organize them. But in this discipline, every developer is designing with every line of code that they're writing in this discipline. And so our day-to-day is about, sorry?
Hey, Drew, I was going to ask a question.
Yeah, please.
So can you talk quickly? So some of this stuff in my head sounds like an overlap between like a framework you would use and actual like writing of code. Where is there a line, or can you talk through the line between, hey, we use Rails, so that means we have this sort of folder structure and these type of we're implementing these classes that extend Active Record, but how much of that is a framework and how much of that is actual software design?
Within Rails itself?
Or even just like React, right? React has its own sort of patterns.
Okay. Yeah, I'll talk to that. So yeah, Rails, Next.js, Express, whatever framework, Spring, they're all coding frameworks, design frameworks, language frameworks that have their own idea of how to design applications. And they give you a lot of tools, right? They give you a lot of tools from a very opinionated standpoint, right? Generally speaking. From what I've seen, most of the time, they conflict with domain-driven design, because as you'll see as we talk, like the essence of domain-driven design is to protect the model, protect the business logic. And a lot of times with these frameworks, they don't help you to protect the business logic. What they do is they give you tools for persistence, tools for view, tools for this, that, and the third, and they hook you to the framework. So now if you want to change framework or change the business logic, you end up coupled, right? And the business logic or the model is not protected, right? So
Is that similar to the discussion that you were having on Friday? I think Adam brought up like the tools for is it processing what's it, business logic tools,
Where
where we were like, oh, well, when you use the tool, right, it takes a lot of work to configure it versus like Amber and Brandon mentioned, like I build my own tools.
I can't recall that info, but
Oh, that was a discussion.
Oh, when we were talking about the rules engine.
Yeah.
The rules engine, there you go, rules engine.
oh, right. Okay, yeah, that's another big discussion in the community is that sometimes it benefits you to use the framework and sometimes it benefits you to not use the framework and cook up your own solution. And because the framework comes in with its set of constraints that you may or may not want. Most of the time you don't want it. It overcomplicates the solution. So when you cook up your solution from scratch, you use exactly what you need for your solution. And in addition, you don't couple yourself to the framework. Coupling to a framework is actually a risk because it like I said, it doesn't protect your business logic. It exposes it to the framework. So now if I want to upgrade Rails, now I have to worry about my business logic being threatened because I'm tied to the ORM in Rails or rude, right? Very indecent. Amber, right? I agree with that. So yeah, very, very common discussion. Brandon?
All right, just real quick. Since we were talking through this and you were talking about design, what Drew's saying isn't just a hypothetical thing either. We have a half dozen instances at least or more where our upgrade path is limited or constrained by the previous choices that are made, right? So when you choose to use tools, they in a half dozen instances right now are constraining us for things that we want to do that we can't do as easily as we could have if we just would have done it on our own. So anyway, wanted to throw that. It's not a hypothetical thing. It's not just like, well, in theory, this constrains you, da 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 da. This is real stuff. It is real right now. So
Yeah,
threw that out there.
thank you for highlighting that, Brandon. We're feeling the pain of it right now. Oh, Chris, what's up, man?
Yeah, I just maybe this is just a reinforcement or whatever, but yeah, like you said, frameworks do drive you a particular direction in, as far as design is concerned. Languages are kind of similar too. There's sort of a, I'm not sure if ethos is really the correct term. It's more, it's a philosophical approach, I guess, in a language. Python, Ruby, PHP, you know, there's things that you learn. If you try to move against it, you can end up with very difficult to manage code. I'm talking more at the language level, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's a moot point to this. I don't know, but
No, not at all. It's actually the same issue. And even in the book, if you go to the book, it'll talk about different paradigms. So some languages are object oriented. Some languages are functional languages. Some languages are, I think, what is the Lisp is, I think it's an FP, right, Amber? Am I right?
Yep, it's functional. I
Functional.
thought you were going to say procedural languages.
Procedural. Yeah, they're procedural if you take it back. They're mathematical languages, right? So I can't remember the names off top, but so in the book it spells it out that you choose your language based on your domain and based on your model. Ideally, like if you have a domain that's, you know, just functional in nature, like mathematical, I put this in, I get this out, you might want to go with a functional language. So language selection, framework selection, Haskell, that's what it is. Thank you for that, Amber. So wow, time is flying by. Let's see what design is. So we kind of went through this. I won't dwell on that any further. Now, the reason, I don't know if I need to go into depth with this. I'll just touch on a few points because I think by now it's obvious why it's important to the business. I'll just touch on this graph here. This is the design stamina hypothesis illustration by Martin Fowler. And what it talks about, it basically illustrates the need, the purpose of good design, or the why behind it. Look at the blue line and then the brown line. The blue line's for good design, brown line, no design. If you look at it, as time goes, right, when you start out, you actually code more features faster using no design. You're actually more productive. But there comes a point where you lose having no design, and having good design accelerates you. So down here it says below this point, the trade-off is worth it. Let me just go fast. I don't need to worry about design. Let me just make ship features and move fast, right? But past this line, we need to pay attention to good design. And there's money behind these decisions. This is purely an economic decision, as you can see, because this is cumulative functionality, right? More functionality shipped with better design. All these tickets basically reinforce this idea. So the value is business agility. And you know, the first week or so I joined, it's like we got all these customers lined up. We got this big opportunity with Cyberstar. We got talent. We got academy. There's a lot of good things down the line, and you know, we want to be able to meet the opportunities. So paying attention to design, getting on the same page is, I think, critical for us to be doing. So questions, comments on design? I think we already went over a few. Unless you guys have any more on the basic definition of design. The what's and whys. Good. All right.
So just
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
a couple things that I would mention for the rationale that I wrote in coding standards, and you could tell me for ATCTS, if you could tell me if this fits in or not. When writing code, make sure that it's functioning and achieves the goal, readable and clean, performant, maintainable, efficient and succinct, and secure.
Certainly, those definitely fall in the same line. What I'm looking for is, I thought I had a ticket specifically calling out some of the characteristics
There's some right there, yeah.
of good design. Dang it, didn't I have this? All right.
If you control F, if you can find
Oh, thank you. Yeah, good idea. There we go.
Yeah, I had to ignore testable in ATCTS, unfortunately.
So I have a bunch of these everywhere, so those might actually not be the ones. But so I have four qualities, and I think you called a few of them out. Testable, clear, simple, and reversible. Right? You called one out, secure, and I think we should definitely, I should add that to the list, because in this domain, that's huge. That's critical in this domain, that we pay attention to security. And I think we should be explicit about security. So that's something I'll add to this. Chris, thank you for that.
Sure. And
yeah, thanks, Olivia.
The I just add this comment. Sometimes secure can override the other attributes.
Yeah, there's a trade-off.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yep. We got to prioritize. Sure. Security, I look at like one of those ilities that come after you make it, you optimize for security. And sometimes you might have to put that first as your priority in design. But yeah, it's a trade-off. It's you know, between all four of those. So now if we go into DDD, now that we understand and agree on design, it's design that's driven by the domain, duh. Well, then what's a domain and what does it mean to be driven? All right, so we got 2 minutes. So I don't know how far I'm going to get into this section, actually. I'll keep going, and if anyone has to drop, feel free. This is being recorded, so we'll be able to come back to it.
You scheduled actually for 45 minutes. I don't know if that helps you.
Yeah, I definitely did. I know Amber has to drop. She has an exec meeting, and I'm not sure if anyone else has to go, but I'll keep going. If anyone has to drop, feel free.
I mean, I don't care about Amber.
Oh.
Rude.
Well,
Oh.
you guys making me laugh. I care about Amber.
I do too, actually.
You're hanging us. You're hanging us. Just get to the definition.
Just get to it. Just get to it. All right. So let's go over some misconceptions about domain and model, because this comes up a lot. The domain is not the model, is not, they're distinct things in DDD, domain and model. So they're not whatever we put into APIs/models. They're not that. I mean, they should be. That's Rails attempt at getting us to define business logic objects separate from the framework. That's what I interpret that models folder to be. But when you tie everything to active record and whatever other hooks they have into the framework, it defeats the purpose of protecting the model. That's the problem with that folder. Like, you have to be really intentional about separating from the framework. So it's not a technical architect. The domain is not a technical thing. The model is not a technical thing. It's not the data, not the DB, it's not the schema. Domain or model. Those words are distinctly different, right? Also, the domain changes. It's not static or rigid. It's not only for microservices. There's that misconception too. Like DDD is from those microservice guys, right? REST, you don't need DDD for REST, or you can't use it for REST. Misconceptions. It's not exclusive to complex system either. And it's because it's not an all or nothing thing. There are a lot of tools within the toolbox of DDD. And it's not just for devs or for product business analyst people. Those are some misconceptions. Now you'll see these terms a lot: model object and domain object, and people use them interchangeably as synonyms for any object that has business logic. And I think personally, I'm okay with that. Like, as long as we know what we're talking about. If we say model objects, we'll define a model object for business logic about whatever. That terminology to me doesn't conflict with what you'll find in the blue book. They call it the blue book. So I'm this guy with that, right? I'll allow it. And here's why. Because that goes against the whole be strict about your definitions. But here's why. And this is a sneak peek into when we get into tactical DDD. Value object, aggregate, service, facade. These are all called out explicitly in the book as types of objects that hold business logic. But they're responsible for different design concerns with your business logic. And these types of objects make up what you would call the model in your code, or the domain in your code. So the domain in real life is, we'll go over the definition. This is the technical representation of the domain, these types of objects. So there'll be hundreds of value objects, thousands of entities, aggregate, service, et cetera, and they all comprise the model. And this is what protects our model from external things like the framework. So ideally, these won't be attached to the framework in any way. There'll be no hooks on these objects. ideally, right? And in that way, it'll be protected. All right, so we'll get into that in the future sessions. So let's break down domain-driven design, right? So domain, here's the definition of a domain. It's the business subject matter, simply put. That's what it is. That's all it is. It's the set of problems and needs of our customers and users. And our example is this, the DODD 8140 DCWF. That's our domain. And I'm sure Olivia Vick, if we spent an hour, she'll tell us everything else about the domain. But these, I just call these out. And of course, here's the manual. This is the domain. Chris, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think I would probably say that 8140 is a part of it, providing compliance for 8140.
Yeah, Cyberstar Foundation is compliance, tracking, and reporting for cyber personnel.
So I would kind of revise that, it being the domain rather than just 8140 itself.
Oh yeah, this is certainly not like a comprehensive. I should add ETC after that. Like
well, I mean, if we're going to be specific on terminology, those are frameworks that are listed there. And to Olivia's point, tracking, compliance, and reporting is actually the domain.
Okay, the subject matter around, right? The idea is it's whatever. It's all of that. It's the subject matter that is related to these frameworks and whatever's related to these frameworks, right? That's the scope. The scope of our domain is the subject matter related to these frameworks. I can begin to tell you this, the scope of the domain. Olivia is probably the best person. Chris has a lot. Like you guys could school me on the scope and the far reaches of the domain. But for all intents and purposes, that's why I use the word the subject matter, right? The everything involved. So compliance, reporting, training, everything within talent, academy, and beyond, right? As it pertains to Cyberstar. And we'll get into domains. And oh yeah, by the way, I think I have a ticket for that. Here we go. By the way, subdomains are a thing. So we can have in that large scope of the Cyberstar world universe, we can have solar systems, right? And that would be a subdomain. So I would look at foundation as a subdomain, talent as a subdomain, academy as a subdomain, right? And a subdomain might be composed of other subdomains. Subdomain basically means a subset of the domain, obviously, but there's usually a mapping between business, different verticals in the business or different value streams in the business with a subdomain. There's usually a mapping there. Sometimes it's one-to-one. Most of the time it's a one-to-one mapping where business value stream, subdomain. And then we'll get into bounded context later. But so that's how you look at domains and subdomains, specific in DDD world. So driven, let's not gloss over driven. What does it mean to be driven? Design decisions influenced primarily, strictly, and consistently by the domain. And it stays in lockstep with. That means if the domain changes, so does the design. If the design changes, it also goes back to change the domain. And I'll go over that in more detail when we get to the model, right? So it stays in sync with the domain. That's what it means to be driven in DDD terms. Also, DDD spells out that the primary decision-making factor is not the tech, right? It's not the framework. It's not the cloud platform. It's not, and it's not the ility. It's not like we're going for scalability. So let's base all our design decisions on scalability, or let's primarily, that is, because you still have to consider those entities, of course. But the primary decision, the primary factor will be the domain, the subject matter again, right? We talked about security just now, right? So security is one of the major non-functional requirements we have to consider. But in the DDD universe, it's not the primary concern, right? And design, we already covered. So put that together, you get in name a definition of domain-driven design. I won't read through all of this, but I will point this one out. DDD, right? So if we broke it down, it's model-driven design, which is another discipline based on the model. So we understand what domain-driven is. Model-driven is going into a different discipline. You can go to Wikipedia and find a definition for it, but it basically, DDD extends model-driven design, and it adds ubiquitous language, knowledge crunching, bounded context to kind of extend what model-driven design already gives. We'll get into that a little bit, I think in session 2, actually. Another thing to call out, there's an emphasis in DDD on communication and collaboration between developers and business people.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know of another design methodology that does that emphasizes that. But they spend chapters really bringing home the point that this is key, and this is because of the importance of the model that we'll get into. So why DDD over regular old just design? Why not just everyone have their own conception of design and agree on that? And the answer is because DDD again aims to tackle complexity in a domain and in a system. And 8140, DCWF, etc., our domain, right? Our subject matter is complex, and not only is it complex, but it's evolving, right? Olivia, back me up if I'm lying, right? If I'm lying, correct me. DDD is also, right, so it's aimed at tackling complexity and evolving complexity. And it's also based on the fact that the system is socio-technical, to use a big word, but all that means is people interactions and computer interactions are both important for good design. And it's emphasized in the book, so that's why it's kind of being repetitive with this, but it's one of the major components of the methodology, collaboration. So let's play devil's advocate with all this, right? So that's Drewski, by the way, if you don't know. Just like, maybe you won't need this, right? If there's no complexity in the domain model or in the technology, then you might not want to pay for the learning curve, pay the cost of the learning curve, right? If there's resistance to that heavy collaboration I keep talking about, for whatever reason, right? It might have valid reasons, right? We might want to hold off because it takes a lot of collaboration. And there's a learning curve, right? This is an example of that right now. We had 45 minutes of like going over like foundational definitions. This is a part of that learning curve. So if we can't afford that, then we might not need DDD, like the whole bag of tricks, but we can choose the concepts that serve us and evolve from there. We don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can at least use the design vocabulary that we're going over, and then adopt whichever other parts we want to use. It's not all or nothing. All right, any questions on that? I think we got to the end. Okay, wow, look at that. We got 3 minutes left. So quick recap, we set a baseline understanding of DDD and design, which set a foundation for when we get into concrete patterns, when we get into the core principles of DDD, now we have like a language that we can use and we won't be confused, right? And talking at each other, you know, resolve common misconceptions, overview of some of the business value, concrete definition and name. If you guys want to, after this, for some reason, go and look on the web and say, hey, Drew, you were wrong about the definition of domain, please do so and correct me, because I don't want to be lying to you guys. I highly recommend the book if you want to study design or architecture. And a sneak peek real quick into the next session tomorrow, right? I think we have something set up for tomorrow. We're going to go over this. Now, this is we're getting into the juicy parts. This, I think, being the most important part. So that'll be tomorrow. And yeah. Any questions? Somebody has their hand raised. Sam, what's up, man?
Sorry, I clicked the arrow next to the microphone instead of the microphone. I guess this is, and maybe you answered this in a way and I just missed it. Is the idea the architecture of the app is domain, or the technology or whatever you're building, or is it the application itself, or is it both? So like, are you supposed to understand the domain from being in the Cyberstar app?
No.
Or are you supposed to understand the domain from being in the code?
Neither. Well,
But, or like have some sort of like understanding of the domain based on those things. Like, because I always,
yes.
I kind of think of it as like, if you're building that way, there should be some amount of like reversal of information. Like writing a test can some kind of act like a documentation for the way code works, right? Like there's that potential.
I love the way you phrased it the second time you said it. You said understanding of the domain.
Yeah.
Perfect. And this is the next session when we get into the model, because the understanding of the domain is the model. So that should live in the code. You should see the model in the code. And there's a difference. There's your domain and there's your model. There's a difference. Like the subject matter of Cyberstar is complex. Like we were in a knowledge in a session on Friday, right? It's very complex, but our model doesn't have to be complex. The way we understand it doesn't have to be, and that should be in the code. And then, so the idea with that is, if you change the model, let's say we change our understanding of the domain, the code has to change. And if the code changes, it changes the model. So they're in lockstep. So the design of code is kept in lockstep with the model.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, that's a good question, and we'll deep dive into that tomorrow.
Hey, I know I'm sort of ancillary support cast, not a developer. But this is like, I love this type of stuff. It's very interesting. So I hadn't heard of model driven design, but that seemed really basically like the heart of actually Sam's question and even Brandon's question earlier. So like if I read, this is Google, okay, models.
Yeah.
Abstraction layer, separating business logic from underlying platform technology.
Yes. So that's like the textbooky language I was trying to avoid. It just basically means, when you boil it down, it's your understanding. Like abstraction is a representation of something. It's like it's the semantics.
Mm-hmm.
So the model, it's your understanding of. A model is a mental model.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and so I agree, and I'm reading straight from Google, but where I thought, like, where that helped click when you were answering these questions and earlier questions was like, was the understanding, the business logic, right, is clear based on the model, and that's what lives in the system. That was your answer basically to Sam's question. And then, the choices of some of the tools we use, like Rails or whatever, right? The business logic is separate from that, and hopefully not constrained.
Exactly. Yep. That's the idea. So that protects the model. That protects our business. Chris pointed out a few days ago, last week, I think, whenever it was, that our bread and butter is that compliance engine, our compliance logic is a big, like, critical part. And if that's not protected, if that's like tied to our database scheme or our database structure, or like, you know, I was on a project once where all the logic was in Oracle. So what if we wanted to, we were tied to Oracle? But what if something, you know, what if we couldn't use Oracle for that for some reason? Now we have to rewrite our whole app. Like, but when you protect our protect our bread and butter, that secret sauce, there's less risk to the business. And by the way, Olivia, you're not at all ancillary.
Well, I just mean from the technical perspective, you know, I don't want to steal the time if other people have questions or needs and that sort of thing.
Just want to emphasize that part.
But, well, thank you. I very much have a great deal of self-importance. So
all right, I want to add to it then. All right, any other questions? Thank y'all for attending. Hopefully I'll see you guys at tomorrow, session 2, and we'll get into some more juicy bits.
Sounds good, Drew. Thank you, Drew.
Thanks, Brandon. All right.
Man, I struggle to find a reaction buttons in the different things we use for meetings.
Well, that's why give me some thumbs up, man. Some party favors. All right, y'all. See y'all tomorrow. I'm gonna stop presenting.
thanks.
Stop recording.
All right. Bye, everyone.